Department's internship program, which has brought us the infectious disease report, the well report, the strategic planning things. All of that has been funded by our interns and funded by the community association. So we really appreciate that very much, very much. And then one of the other aspects that we're working on, and we're trying to get some outreach material together for the Triple E outbreak. Some information was brought out today. We are in remote possibility of getting it. It is it's highly unlikely that we would get any sort of Triple E positive mosquitoes on Nantucket, but we are still putting information out there to prevent it. We do not have, knock on wood, we haven't had any mosquito testing positive, and we have not had any people presenting with symptoms of Triple E or West Nile. So we're in pretty good shape. Being 30 miles out to sea is working in our favor on this. It provides a pretty significant barrier. Somebody would actually have to purposely bring a tainted mosquito for that reason. So, and then I'll try to yield the rest of my time to the rest of the agenda.
Okay, great. Review of the minutes. Any additions?
I'm good.
Make a motion to approve.
Just one, there was one statement in there where I was quoted about referring to a paper that was talking about the controversies, and I think the word CRISPR was used in there. I actually think the Massachusetts Institute of Technology is not necessarily using CRISPR for everything, so that should really say genetic engineering,
Okay.
just to be accurate.
And then we'll bring those back next meeting.
Or would you like to adopt it with changes?
I would adopt. I move we adopt it with the changes, using the word genetic engineering instead of CRISPR
In place of CRISPR.
in the section where I was quoted.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Fee waiver, septic.
Yes. So the town will be moving a trailer from 12 West Myacomet to the old fire station for some meeting space. As of right now, it's connected to a septic system on the property, but it is we're moving. It's a town-owned building moving onto town-owned property, so they're asking for a fee waiver from the septic abandonment fee. We have no objection.
Can I get a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Variance request, 40 warrants.
I would yield it to Art Casparo.
Thank you for the applicant, Arthur Gasparo, Nantucket Engineering. I'm before you tonight to request a variance from sections 52 and 64 related to the one bedroom per 10,000 square foot limitation. We are in Nantucket within the protection zone, and we're proposing to use IA technology to install a 9-bedroom system, which would be allowed, meets the loading rates from the DEP approval letter for general use approval for denitrification. And without this, we would otherwise have to install a 6-bedroom conventional system. And similar to past applications, if you do the projected math, essentially, it's expected that you would have less nutrient loading from the 9-bedroom IA than the 6-bedroom conventional. And remind that the IA system would have the effluent filters and the operation and maintenance and all the typical requirements.
Art Crowley, Health Department. Excuse me. So the board has been pretty consistent in Nantucket under the current regulations granting these bedroom credits. Certainly, if IAs were required, we would not be recommending, but it is a net benefit to the environment, and we would recommend that you stay with the consistency that you've been granting these. It, I think ends up being like 4.5 bedrooms worth of nitrogen over a 6-bedroom conventional that's there. that would be there should this be denied.
Any questions?
No.
I have no problems.
Can I get a motion to approve the variance?
Second.
Oh, so moved. I move. Being consistent with our past
Okay.
performances.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, Art.
Thank you.
Okay, sewer regulation discussion. Dave?
Thank you, everyone. I do have some handouts that you have the regulations in the packet also. Thank you, everybody, for letting us come. I have Frank Ayotte and Saya Quayle from both from Hazen and Sawyer. They've been my consultants on this whole project for the regulation rewrite. They're also doing a fog program for us, fats, oils, and grease program. They've done a bunch of other work for us. They were also the engineers of record for the C Street pump station, so they've got a lot of history here with the island now. What we're doing, we're finally taking and trying to bring the regulations up to 20th century, let alone the 21st. We're trying to get to where we are currently. I've had a lot of discussions with Roberto and other members in the past of what some of the changes we want to do. I don't know if there's any specific questions that you guys wanted to go into or not, but we pretty much have overhauled the regulations from front to back, including definitions, a lot of input from Roberto and Art on different things that we've caught in the past few years, or stuff that we've caught very recently that have come up, and it's like, okay, we can add that to the regulations now. So it's been a fairly lengthy process, but I think we have touched pretty much on every aspect of it, from the minor stuff to definitions. We tried to bring all of our definitions in line with Board of Health regulations and Planning Board regulations, so that if we're calling something a structure, it's not called a dwelling elsewhere or whatever. So we're trying to be as uniform as we possibly can. One of the things that are in this set of regulations that were not in any previous regulations were there's a good sized fee table in the back and schedule of different things, allowing the department to be able to charge different fees for services or whatever. Right now, we have no mechanism available to do any kind of charging for services or anything that we may have to provide for. Say we have someone's private sewer force line broken or something in the road, and we can't get a contractor. We would be able to repair that ourselves and send the property owner a bill. Something that we don't have that ability to do now.
Would that mostly be like in emergency cases like that?
Most oftentimes it would be just for emergencies, yes. If it's something that's just happened and we can't get anyone to respond, we now have the equipment that we could do small spot repairs, get it fixed, stop the flow, and then a regular contractor would go in and fix that. Yeah. One of the bigger pieces of the regulations that, as far as services, is that when the Novak Consulting Group did a look of the town and stuff like that, one of the items that they saw that was kind of unusual for us is we allow contractors and whatnot to do all the sewer connections in the streets. The water company does not. They do all their own taps. They wanted the town to lean towards the town doing the tap and the patch and everything in the street to the property line as the town's responsibility. Something that we will move forward with at some point. We're not ready yet. We have to get the guys trained and equipment and everything like that. But that's something that we are looking to go to. We've worked very closely with Roberto and his crew on trying to bring in articles, the Regulation 69 and everything in line with what we're doing, especially with the 400 connections in the Schimel project area and everything else that's going on. But Saya has been pretty much the lead on this whole thing. And and I can have her come up and give you guys a little brief orientation of what we've done and where we've come from. At some point, talking with Roberta, we may want to look at grease trap inspections and different things going forward. Why we're in draft form now, this is why I wanted to come to you and present this to you now, so that if we have some changes or additions, let's get them in before we go to the select board and other public meetings. So I'll ask Saya to come up now, and if you guys have any questions.
Hi, I'm Saya Qualls with Hazen and Sawyer, and just wanted to speak to you a little bit about the work that we've been doing on the sewer regs. David covered a good bit of it, actually, pretty well. But some of the things that we're looking to do, one of the things was to pull out the standards and specs from the regulations, so that if you needed to make changes to the standards and specs, they would be a standalone document, and it wouldn't be too difficult to do that. In their place, we have put a placeholder for fats, oils, and grease ordinance. We think that's really important for Nantucket to have that. So that's going to be really the next thing on our list of things to do once we get these rules approved by the select board. So just to kind of go over the next steps in the process, after we meet with you guys and you've had your opportunity to look over the regulations and make any comments that you would like, then we'll edit the regs, we'll revise them to accommodate any comments that you have. Then they'll be ready for legal review. And following legal review, we anticipate that we'll have a number, and I'm not exactly sure how many, but stakeholder meetings, so that by the time they actually go to the select board for formal approval, they're not going to be a surprise to anyone. So, and then finally, they go to select board, and hopefully they'll approve it, and you've got brand new sewer regs.
Did you want to ask her any question?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, I just have one question, because I do a lot of research and stuff. I see like these regulations. Did you guys work on Harwich and Chatham?
Pardon me?
Did you work on the Harwich and Chatham sewer?
Chatham sewer?
Yeah.
Well, we looked at it. We didn't work on those, but
because
we did.
their
we looked at that.
regulations that they just put into effect are very, very similar.
Yeah, we did look at what they did.
Right.
We actually pulled about 4 or 5 different example regulations and reviewed those very carefully and pulled what we felt like would be good fits for Nantucket.
Yeah.
The question, you said this is they have to have a public meeting for all of this. Okay, do you have any idea when that's gonna be?
I don't. I know that it's going to be sometime this fall, but we have to give legal a certain amount of time to review the regulations, and then you have to give the select board, I think they need a certain amount of notice before the regs actually go before them for approval. So I would say we're looking at maybe a couple of months, but when I just think about everything that has to be done, that seems reasonable to me.
Okay, thank you.
The FOG program, maybe would that be under Board of Health's jurisdiction or sewer department, depending on whether the trap or the unit was inside or or outside?
Well, those are the things that we can work out as we develop a FOG ordinance that is specific to Nantucket. My preference would be for the ordinance to sort of be agnostic in that regard, and that way you could develop any kind of a memorandum of agreement or standard operating procedures on how the town would divvy up those responsibilities.
Yeah, we're always allowed to adopt agents for specific regulations.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
We can all
I mean,
work
I
together.
think it's a very important program, but I know how strapped we are with
So is David,
inspections.
and so is David as well. So
Okay.
we'll be working together on a lot of this.
One of the things that talking with Roberto and Steve about is it would definitely greatly benefit us on the street side if we had a little more hands-on with some of the grease traps. And we realize we're not the enforcement half of it. That would be within your jurisdiction. But I mean, I've even taken at least talked to the crew about this, and they're all on board. They're excited that we could have a little more control with some of the grease issues that we're having. So it would be definitely a joint effort, and trying to just, both of our staffs, are definitely a little light, but we could definitely work together, I think, very easily on this. One of the other big things that we've worked with Sayer especially, because she's done regulations in a lot of different states, is we're trying to do everything, make everything uniform compared to the old regulations where they were old regulations. And there was a lot of different things that could have been better. And now we have that opportunity to change. We're trying to mandate and change everything so that, for example, if you do a new connection to a sewer main, everything's 6-inch to the side of the street, so that to the property line, and then they can go 4-inch. So that when you go for a repair, you go for an emergency, you're going to know that it's going to be a 6-inch lateral and it might be a 10-inch main, but you'll have the parts. We won't have to have an unbelievable amount of inventory they can be able to do repairs. Right. And then this fog ordinance that we've been working on and talking about, and even talking with Roberto on, it's well overdue, but it's exciting to look to the future to see what we can do. And we're also going to be working on a wipes project as well. So
I've noticed a lot of towns lately, actually on TV, are trying to ban them.
That's true. And I will say from our experience, when you're thinking about managing your collection system to make sure that sewage stays in the collection system, a very robust grease program is essential to that. So we anticipate that we'll be working closely with Roberto and his crew on developing these regulations.
Great. Anybody have any other questions? No?
Good.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for stopping by.
All right, thank you.
thank you very much for everyone working together on this with all of our new permitting and everything that's going on. We're getting ready to go online with Intergov, which I know is exciting, but also we're a little leery of it. But it's coming, and I just want to thank Art and Roberto and the whole team. It's been really good working with everyone. I think we talk to each other 3-4 times a day at least nowadays. So something that I don't think that was there in the past. So thank you very much for everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, 9, illicit discharge regulation discussion.
Yes. So recently, there's been a lot of discussion about pool drainage and being drained into public ways, public property, into other people's wells. The list goes on of all the different bad drainage that happens. And one of the things that was always being held off was this was supposed to be put into the stormwater discharge bylaw that was being worked on by Fuss and O'Neill, which is a consultant with DPW. But in the last 2 or 3 months, the number of illicit discharges that we have been finding have doubled easily. And we're only going to see more as the fall goes on and it starts getting cooler. People start draining pools. The more rain we get, we're going to now start seeing sump pumps that are just being tapped into sewers and storm drains without permits, anything like that, and without any performance standards. So we were requested by, and I say we, the Natural Resources Department and the Health Department were requested to tease out the pool bylaw that we had originally written a few years back and represent it to the Board of Selectmen as a bylaw. So before we move forward with anything, what we're looking for is to get the Board of Health's comment and at the very least a consensus endorsement to move forward with this sort of regulation, so that we can get this done and in place before the end of this year, so that we can actually have the teeth, have a regulation in place, have a bylaw or regulation set, so that when this coming pool season starts, we will have everything in place to get it done. And we would be able to move forward in reacting to a lot of the, for lack of a better word, illegal sump pumps that are out there. Right now, if you drive down Gardner in town, you'll see one going right into the road. North Water Street.
Right across the street.
Right on North Water Street, there's one going right onto the sidewalk, which in the winter freezes and turns into an ice slick for everyone walking by. on Bear Street, right behind the poets, not poets, sorry, the office products. The water flows there so constantly. There's actually algae growing.
24 hours a day that thing runs. 24 hours a day.
Exactly.
It never shuts off.
Exactly. They're basically pumping out a wetland because the groundwater is so high there. So none of that had been permitted. So what this regulation does now lets us go back and connect with this so that we can address the issue on North Water Street and we can address the issue on Bear Street, because before we didn't have any real teeth. We had to establish a basis for a public nuisance, a public health nuisance, which is, it's a pretty easy basis for that to use, but if we start using it, any challenge in court, it never holds up. So it's gotten to the point where we needed to build its own regulation and bylaw to address these issues. So at this point, I'm hoping to get comments, questions, and hopefully just a small endorsement to move forward with the process.
So we did discuss pool regulations a while ago. We never did anything with them.
So that's the thing. That's actually exactly where this falls into place. We had discussed pool regulations. We were working on them, and then we were told that they were supposed to be part of a regulation that was being worked on through a consultant at DPW. And we still haven't seen that. In the meantime, pools kept getting built, discharges kept getting thrown into public land, and we still had no teeth to enforce.
We can't eliminate pools or restrict the numbers.
So there was an attempt at by one of the planning board members was going to push it and put forward on a bylaw. I think that was withdrawn before last town meeting.
Right before the town meeting, and I forget because it was too confusing, or
I don't remember, but
it was withdrawn at the time of the meeting.
Right before the meeting. But I do know that there is conversations of it being put back on for this coming town
I
meeting.
was reading something on just the amount of electricity and drainage of a single pool, and you multiply that times the electrical use on this island. It gets just on that.
Yeah.
Not talking about any environmental pollutions.
If we're looking at a 100 cubic foot pool, which is really small spa, that's 768 gallons. When you count everything that's in the filter as well. It's because it's 7.48 gallons per cubic foot. So when you add the extra 30 gallons or so for what's inside the filter, we're looking at around 770, 760.
So these would be regulations at the selectman level and not the Board of Health level?
At the selectman level at this point, so that they can appoint multiple departments as enforcement agents.
It would go across multiple.
Yes.
You said you discovered them. This is a pretty simplistic question, but what do you see? I mean, is it something that you drive by and you see water?
So actually, one of the most recent ones, we received the video of somebody where the water was coming out of a driveway into the road, down a private road, and then into the public road. So it was one of those situations that when it's the private road, what is the argument of, is it contained on site? If it's a private road, do they still contain that on site? Is that considered on site? But as soon as it entered the public road, we were able to connect and enforce on it. But in many cases, it's not. And yes, we really do see just rivers of water sometimes coming out.
For instance, that one we were just talking about, where that pump that's under that development there that runs 24 hours a day. I mean, when they built that, there was a big, huge dry well out in front of that place. But what happened was it fills the dry well up and it just goes right back under the buildings. So I know for a fact that those pumps never, ever, ever. So how would you handle something like that? How would those people stop what's happening?
It's not necessarily that they need to stop the pumping for all 24 hours. It's that where it is right now, it's draining right into the road and letting it run off the road into the storm drain system. releasing it into the storm drain is actually the correct way to do these sump pumps.
Right.
Do it legally.
To do it legally. Right now, having it go into the road causes
Okay, so
causes
it- okay.
problems. So they would have to just re-engineer it to
Right, okay,
connect
fine.
it correctly.
Okay, good.
Just the electrical usage.
Alone.
On an island where we might have to put in a third cable and all, I'm sorry,
Absolutely.
this is crazy.
Absolutely. And that's something that we can discuss too in performance standards. I know the Energy Office has preferred pumps because there are some pumps
That's
that
what we should do.
that use much lower.
This is an opportunity to put that in there. We should have that. This is probably one shot time to do it right. So we have to do it
Absolutely.
with the performance standards of
Yeah. No,
correct pump that doesn't draw
a ton of electricity.
a ton of electricity, whatever you want the phrase is.
That's we say a ton of electricity, but when we get out there, we have to actually see, what the average pump uses, how much, the linear foot, how much head the pump can have, things like that. And that's where the other departments come in.
Well, that
as
they
well.
need to get involved. And so when would these go to the board? We would see these now, or
So what
we'll
we're
have them to assume?
so the pumps, the illicit discharge regulation is in the packet.
Ooh, where did I miss that?
That was in the packet.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't read it.
Yeah. So what we can do, we can either go through them one here. It's only a 3-page regulation right now. And then the other thing that we can do is we can always come back to get more comments. Sorry about that. So what we're looking to do is just get an endorsement to move forward. I know Concom is looking at this next week. We're going to forward. These are being in legal review as well, and I know the Board of Selectmen wants to hear it within the next month or two. So providing individual comments is not a breaking of OML.
I need to study it. I mean,
Absolutely.
I would, Mr. Chairman, not object to us endorsing the concept.
Process.
Because we'd have time at public hearings and other comments to say.
Absolutely. Just like with the sewer regulation, this is still just the draft. We haven't reached any of the public hearing stages. So now is the time to provide comments. Now is the time to add what we need. I know there's a member of the public here today who she has been really great in getting the information to us as well over some of these discharges. And I've had conversations with Ms. Perry as well.
She can skate down North Water Street sometime in the winter.
Yeah, you really see the North Water Street one in the winter. In the summer, it's kind of hidden, but in the winter, you really see it when it freezes over the sidewalk. This regulation would prevent that. Jeff Carlson and I are working together at getting the forms together, because a regulation like this was also going to create paperwork. It's going to create other sorts of things. So you read in the regulation in the packet where we discuss performance standards as an appendix, and that would be what we're going to be adding. So the appendix, just like with the sewer regulation, would be something living, something that it would be easier to change based on as new technologies become available. So we're not beholden to what was voted in at that time, kind of like Title V. Where Title V, whatever was voted in on 1994, and anything after 1994 has to meet the 1994 specification, even though new technology is out there that is better than that. It's not explicitly laid out in Title V, therefore you can't use it. So it's by pulling the standards out of the regulation and making it an internal document, we'd be able to change it as time goes on.
Any other questions? Or?
No?
Good. I mean, I think that the board's, like you to move forward. Do you need an official?
I would prefer if we have like an official vote or a consensus at least to move forward.
Get a motion from
I'll
somebody
make a motion.
to
to accept,
To consent to move forward and
yeah, to move forward.
Endorsement of consent to move forward with the
second.
regulation.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thanks.
Do you have any comments or anyone?
Do you,
No, they haven't seen the videos. No, I did not forward the
I
video.
apologize. Somehow I missed reading that before, but I will get back to you.
sometimes
No,
I wish we could have this so we
worries.
could see things. But
Yeah, well, this TV was supposed to be there so that the people on the front can watch it while the public is here. But this TV, for some reason, the video is not connected. Doesn't work well. But yeah, moving forward, I don't know if the videos were part of the packet. I don't believe so, but I can forward them.
yeah, can you forward it to?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was very well done.
Okay, continuation of public hearing regulation 51.
So we need to reopen the hearing.
Can I get a motion to reopen the hearing?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I second it, all in favor.
So we find ourselves at this juncture again with the hearing for the Nantucket regulation that is supposed to come into effect. And SMAST, once again, has not delivered their landfill report. We are now 7 months out and nothing. We did have town council reach out to them with requesting a final date because it is to the point where this regulation is being held up. What's going to be put on town? We're now at town meeting. We're setting the schedule for town meeting. We need to know what bylaw is going to be on there, if there's going to be a bylaw. So it's, in my opinion, downright ridiculous and embarrassing for them, more so than it is for us. So as a result, we're at this point where we need to either vote to set a start date for the regulation or push it back again, push back the public hearing again.
What was our
This is the
action
third or
last
fourth time we
It's
pushed
the-
it back, right?
It's the third time.
Yeah, so, I mean,
This would be the third time to push it back.
I think we have no option but
We
to
don't
push
have
it
an
back, and given that it just fares to the Nantucket residents.
Agreed.
but the big problem is, I mean, this could go on forever.
Agreed.
And at some point, we have to make a stand. I mean, we can't just keep doing this month after month after month after month. I mean,
One of the things we can do is so that we don't constantly push back a public hearing, because that is a very tedious situation, is we can set a start date, X amount of months in the future. And then once we get the landfill study, with that information, we can decide on whether we want to open a public hearing.
but we have no idea at all when you're gonna get that.
Unfortunately, no. And SMAST is at this point cut off communication.
And there's no way we can hold their feet to the fire, there's nothing,
We're withholding payment. They have not been
obviously
paid
they
for the
don't seem
work.
to care.
Yeah.
But basically, they've been issuing false statements because they have been telling
Promising
us
us.
in writing, I'm assuming,
In writing,
that within a week we would have the results, and then nothing happened.
and then nothing.
So- And I think by giving,
And they
agreeing
don't,
to a
they
date,
don't even
it's a
have
cart before
excuses,
the
right?
horse.
They don't have excuses at all.
They don't have excuses at all. They just don't deliver.
And it's ridiculous to start all over.
It'll be
Somebody
extremely
else.
expensive to start all over because somebody would have to develop a new model. It's a situation where they basically have the monopoly on the nitrogen models, the estuary and tributary model.
Art Crowley, Health Department. The information, obviously, you guys know is critical that you need to determine, as well as the town needs to determine sewering the area. So my thinking is would be like to push back the date as much as that is not palatable, to try to at least hold some feet to the fire to, like, say, December 19th, which is 3 months from now, instead of moving to, like, say, a whole year in advance and giving a cushion to them to not provide, the data. So just a thought to think about and weigh, or, Roberto had a pretty good idea about setting a date certain, but,
I don't think that's fair to the Matticat residents. They're not here to discuss it. So therefore, I would
Absolutely.
continue. I'm sorry. It's not ideal, but I would continue.
Continue to the 19th.
I like
Which is December?
3 month, 19 before the end of the year.
I'll agree to that, but, we'll probably be sitting here again in 3 months saying the same thing.
I think at this point, now that town council is involved, I think we'll be getting the response a little bit quicker. But at least a response would be better than no response than we have now. Yeah, the December 19th is a perfect timing. That is the 3 months. That's more or less what I was thinking for the set date, so that we can open a new hearing if we had to. But it's third Thursday is December 19th.
So I'm sorry. What are we doing now? We're delaying the hearing to the 19th.
To the 19th.
Right. But
You
we're
know.
delaying the implementation of the regulation.
Correct. That's
See both.
that's the point where we'd be moving both. So that's what I was saying. We can set a date certain for the regulation itself later, or we can just continue the hearing, in which case the regulation does not go into effect as the public hearing is still open.
I would
Just keep the two together.
I would continue the public hearing.
Perfect.
I don't think we can set a date for the end of the regulation. We don't have anyone here to argue for it or against it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I have no objection
So
to that.
I would make a motion that we continue the public hearing until next meeting.
Next meeting?
The next meeting, okay.
Or we can continue the public hearing to the 19th.
Of December.
Okay.
And that will still keep, we will not implement the regulation.
Yes, the regulation will not be implemented.
But we will continue the public hearing to the 19th.
Okay.
Correct.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Does anybody have anything else to say out there? Can I get a motion to close this public hearing?
Move to adjourn.
No, the public hearing.
Public, the public,
sorry.
on
Sorry.
51?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, not public. We can't close it because once we close the public hearing,
Continue.
We're
Yeah,
ju-
we're continue-
just- we're
Continue.
talking about it for the next 2 months.
yeah, we'll continue it to the 19th. Yeah. Yeah, if we close the public hearing, then it's basically what I was saying. We can,
Okay.
yeah. And then board member updates.
So we'll get on that, the extending to the 19th of December. And good. Next thing,
We should be good.
updates and concerns.
Yep, from the board. So if anyone has anything they'd like to see on a future agenda, anything you would like me to put on.
Oh, what's
Actually, I would love to see the public service segment of, I know that Rachel has moved over to town administration, but just what our basic umbrella is.
Okay, so the
In
new
oversight,
the
yeah.
organizational structure. Okay. Okay. For next agenda. Okay, one of the things that we can do is starting for the next agenda, Rachel will have been fully moved over to human service. To the assistant town manager position, and we might have already hired a new human services person, so I can actually add the human services as a full discussion.
about, it's been in the news lately a lot, the whole vaping and where we stand on some of these.
Yes. So one of the things that we're looking at is actually there's. Thank you for bringing that up. I should have brought that up at the director's report. One of the discussions that we've been having internally with the staff as well as town administration is a lot of the towns are starting to move towards a ban on especially the flavored vape, anything that's not tobacco flavored. It's a couple of towns are already moving in that direction, and I believe a whole state in this last week has moved to ban it. It's New York.
Yeah.
Okay, has moved to ban the flavors as well. It's what we've been saying from the beginning. If believe there was an article in the INM about a year and a half ago now, where I specifically said that one of the issues that we're going to be running into is lung problems among these youth because they're using propylene glycol as a carrier. And lo and behold, it is the propylene glycol and mixed with the THC oil that was in from one of these manufacturers that ended up causing the issue. It is an anomaly in this specific manufacturing process. What's happening with the outbreak in the lung problems that people are presenting in are people who used a specific product. At the most, this falls more under a product recall rather than an issue with vaping in general across the entire population. However, it opens up the discussion about how vaping in today's market is exactly the same thing as the smoking 70 years ago, where it was on TV. It's targeted against youth, and we're seeing exactly what was happening. In the same thing, they're sending them to soldiers just like they did in World War II. It's exactly the same. So what a lot of state boards of health, state health commissioners, the Massachusetts Association of Health Boards, they're working on draft regulations that we can adopt to look at either downright banning or restricting it even further. There was a town in Massachusetts, actually on the Cape, last week or 2 weeks ago, that voted to restrict the sales of all vaping products to only nicotine retailers. So they have to be 21 and older to even enter the store. You can't buy it at a Cumberland Farms. You can't buy it at a gas station. It'll have to be a store specifically made only to sell tobacco products. I don't remember which town it was. I believe it was Dennis, but I'd have to look again. So there are many ways to approach it, but it is a conversation we are having internally, and there is support from town administration to move forward with a ban.
Would we have something for the next meeting?
I can put it on
Vote
the.
on, or no, I would have to have a public hearing?
We would
That's
it would same thing,
2
public
months.
hearings, yeah, same topic as public hearings as always, legal review, draft regulations, but we can get to work on a regulation starting tomorrow.
The state will probably have done it beforehand for us. Yes?
Possibly not.
No?
So surprisingly, even though there's a fervor over it right now, chances that the state will have a regulation in place by the time that we have one are very slim right now. Mainly because of each individual town having so much control over tobacco sales that we're more likely to get it done locally than we are to get it done at the state level.
But isn't polyethylene glycol an approved adjuvant for some medications?
It is. It has the generally recognized as safe from FDA certification. It has all of that. However, it was never approved as
Smoking.
not just for smoking, but at the concentration in which it's in. It's an approved adjuvant to bring in, I believe, like ipetronium bromide, which is the.
It's been used years and years ago, not recently, and actually in some medications, it's a way to make them more soluble or whatever.
It increases. It acts as a surfactant.
And so, oh my God, yes, it's perfect.
Exactly. It acts as a surfactant, so it carries it really fast, and it punctures right through the lung blood barrier, which is what you want in a medication. But you want it at a low concentration. You want it at a very low concentration. At maybe
Medication, not for that.
you want the medication, not the glycol. Exactly. In this case, the glycol is the primary product. The THC solution or the nicotine solution that's being brought in in this oil, it's 10%. On the other hand, when you're looking at a medication, 10% is the glycol,
Probably less than 10%.
maybe even less. Yeah.
Okay.
So it falls under a high exposure, inhalation exposure. So on that dose response curve, we're looking at right smack in the middle where people are, you're looking at that level where people are at a certain weight level. 50% of the population is reacting, 50% of the population is not. Because it's right smack right now in the middle. Because there has been no research on these CBD products and the THC. The reason I mentioned CBD and THC products is because those are the two specific products that people are reacting to right now. They're not reacting to your typical nicotine product.
Any other questions?
You all set? Yep.
Okay.
Get a motion to adjourn?
Again,
Second.
motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks.